There are two kinds of stories that we're used to hearing when it comes to hitchhikers. One is usually concerned with a great road trip epic, traveling from coast to coast, experiencing part of the world and learning something greater about oneself. The other is a horrific tale, in which a hitchhiker gets inside the wrong car and all hell breaks loose. As you can probably guess, our list today, the top 5 scary hitchhiking stories that are real, is very much concerned with the latter kind of story. These stories come from all over the globe. Some you may be familiar with, while others were a little less publicized. Either way, all of them will make you never want to try hitchhiking ever again. Let's jump in. Starting us off in at number 5, the Icelandic hitchhiker killer. Hitchhiking across Iceland isn't super uncommon, but this instance that happened on August 16th of 1982 is definitely a rarity. Two sisters by the name of Yvette and Mary Bauhaud were making their way throughout the southern parts of Iceland and accepted a lift from a driver by the name of Grétar Arnason. He dropped the girls off at a small cabin in the country. According to Marie's testimony during his trial, when he first picked them up, he told them that his job was to protect the area and help tourists. His English was quite good, and they assumed that he was used to dealing with tourists on a regular basis. They even wrote him a thank you note in the guest book of the cabin too. But then at 11:30 p.m. that night, there was a knock on the cabin door, and Grétar was there, holding a flashlight and a rifle, accusing Yvette of having marijuana, saying that he wanted them to come to the police station with him. They refused to go with him. He then left the cabin and returned with metal wire. This is when Marie says the two of them got really scared and pleaded with him to leave them alone. He left but then returned with a large rock and proceeded to beat Marie with it. She collapsed to the floor and Yvette ran out of the cabin right before he hit Marie and knocked her unconscious. She woke up to the sound of a gunshot. Panicked, she hid inside of a sleeping bag until the police arrived at the cabin. 3 days later, they located Grétar's car and found Yvette's body inside his trunk. When police found him, he was hiding inside a cave, and had scratched a suicide note onto the shaft of his rifle that read, "They had hash, and when I told them to come with me to the police, they attacked me. I know I messed up because you'd never believe me." He claimed it was an accident and was sentenced to 16 years in prison. And at number 4, the Outback serial killer. These cases occurred in Australia and took place on what is now commonly referred to as the Highway of Death in Queensland, on the remote Flinders Highway. Over 11 people have gone missing, with the remains found in nearby areas, some as skeletal remains, others through various stages of decomposing, and some never found at all. While the killings occurred between the late 80s and early 2000s, in 2014 interest was sparked in it again, after one of the assumed victims, 32-year-old Tony Jones, had his cold case reopened after new evidence was uncovered. The cases still remain unsolved today, and there is no way of knowing whether this is all the work of one serial killer or several murderers within the area. In our number 3 spot, the Santa Rosa hitchhiker murders. This next number may have connections to one of the most elusive serial killers in American history, the Zodiac Killer. Between 1972 and 1973 in Santa Rosa, California, there were 7 murders that occurred and were never solved, and all of the victims were suspected to have been chosen by the killer because they were hitchhiking. Each of the victims' bodies were dumped in deep embankments or creek beds in rural areas near Santa Rosa, with the women's ages ranging from as old as 20 to as young as 12. Most had been raped and all of them had been found nude, minus one victim who was never recovered at all. How is this possibly connected to the Zodiac Killer? In his last letter on January 19, 1974, the Zodiac Killer took credit for a total of 37 murders, despite only 5 having been attributed to him by authorities, leading some to suspect that he may have been responsible for the hitchhike killings. One of the Zodiac suspects also lived in a trailer in Santa Rosa, close to where most of the victims were found, although he was later cleared as a suspect thanks to DNA tests matched up with DNA found on the killer's letter. To this day, the murders remain unsolved. And at number 2, Colleen Stan. Colleen Stan's story is pretty up. On May 19th of 1977, Colleen decided that she would hitchhike 400 miles to surprise her friend in Westwood, California for her birthday. She had made it within 100 miles of Westwood when she hitchhiked with a man named Cameron Hooker, who at the time was a 23-year-old traveling with his wife and baby. Hooker stopped by a secluded wooden area after picking her up, pulled out a butcher's knife and held it at Colleen's throat while he blindfolded her and fastened a 20-pound hinged wooden box around her head. Hooker abducted Colleen and forced her to be a sex slave in his home for 7 years, keeping her in his cellar and at other times in a box under his and his wife's bed, and putting her through grueling torture that included whipping, dangling her from the ceiling, and tying her to a rack. She was raped repeatedly and forced to sign a slavery contract, with Hooker telling her that if she refused to do whatever he wanted, an organization called The Company would come and get her. Hooker's wife eventually helped her get free and got her to a nearby bus stop. His wife was also the one who ratted him out to the police. Hooker was then sentenced to 104 years in prison. Finally, and at number 1, the truck stop killer. We've talked about this the truck stop killer, Ben Rhodes, on at least one of our other lists on this channel, including featuring his photograph of one of his victims, 14-year-old Regina K. Walters. Rhodes, known as the truck stop killer, was the son of a man who had committed suicide after being arrested for molesting a 12-year-old girl. From then on out, things went downhill for him. He was dishonorably discharged from the military due to his involvement in a robbery, and then married 3 times, having brutally abused his 3rd wife. In the 80s, he became involved in the BDSM scene, and eventually began to work as a long-haul trucker. Rhodes had converted the sleeper cab of his truck into a personal torture chamber, where he kept women he picked up hitchhiking, sometimes for weeks on end, while he would continuously torture and rape them. He preyed mainly on hitchhikers and prostitutes, with his first confirmed victims being a hitchhiking couple. The husband he murdered, dumping his body, and his wife he kept in his sleeper cab for over a week, torturing and raping her until he murdered her. He was finally caught by an officer of the Arizona Highway Patrol when he found his truck pulled over on the side of a highway in the early morning of April 1st, 1990. When investigating the truck, he found a nude woman handcuffed and screaming inside the cab, and found Rhodes, who tried to talk his way out of it, but failed to do so. It was later that Rhodes was connected to several other murders, with investigators finding his photographs of his victims prior to their murders. Well, that's one hell of a list to make you feel sick to your stomach, isn't it? If you dug this video, or feel like you never ever want to go hitchhiking again after hearing these stories, hit that like button. Subscribe if you want to hang out and be creeped out with us some more. And be sure to check out the playlist currently flashing on your screen for more videos like this one. In the meantime, thanks for watching everybody. I'll catch you all in the next video.